And you have to be tough with people. At the very least, you got to be honest with them. You just can't give everyone a pat in the back and tell them like how amazing they are. Sometimes you got to just tell them how it really is. And so as far as jujitsu goes, the proof is on the mats. You don't really need your jujitsu instructor telling you suck. Like, you just got tapped, you know, a bunch of times by another white belt, dude. Like, you haven't been working as hard as that guy. That's what it really comes down to, is who put in the hours. And so the amount of hours that you put in is always going to show, and that's never going to lie.
Hello, friends. Thank you for tuning into this week's episode of the Mayn Idea podcast, where today I have the pleasure of sitting down with Sergio Hernandez. If you want to see the show grow in 2024 and hear from more incredible guests, please take 30 seconds. It is so easy, and leave a 5-star review on Apple or Spotify. And if you enjoy the video content, subscribe to the YouTube. This helps so much with organic show growth and placement. The other way that you can support the show is by simply sharing it with a friend who loves jiu-jitsu, strength and conditioning, or human performance. Sergio Hernandez is a tattoo artist and owner of Pop's Tattoo Shop in City Heights, San Diego. He has fought in the boxing ring, the MMA octagon, and on the jiu-jitsu mats against some of the sport's most legendary practitioners. Sergio also earned his black belt from BJJ royalty, Baret Yoshida. To support this show, please check out the sponsors in the show notes. And ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, Sergio Hernandez. Sergio, my man, thank you so much for taking the time to do this. I know you crank out tattoos in San Diego, so taking
Thanks
the
for
time
having
away
me
from
on.
the shop and being on here to chat about jiu-jitsu and art and everything, it means a lot. So I really appreciate it, man.
Yeah, my pleasure, dude. Yeah, thanks for having me on. Really excited.
So I think
How
a
long you
fun
been doing the
place to start.
podcast?
What's that?
Oh, I'm sorry. I said, how long you been doing the podcast?
Oh, this is going on, coming up on like the 2-year mark. Every single week, every Tuesday for 2 years. This will be episode 134, I think. So
That's
day by
awesome, dude.
day.
Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you.
That's
If we look at, like, I thought it would be kind of a cool place to start with tattoo culture and jujitsu culture, because they both have this unique element in that you start out at zero, right? Like, if you think about like a white belt in jujitsu, right? You're brand new, you know nothing, whether or not you think you know anything. Tattoo apprenticeship, similar. You're coming in with no skills, right? And you have this opportunity where you can develop and you can become a wonderfully skilled, incredible artist who is then able to put art on people for the rest of their life. And you happen to have started both at around the same time, right? You got into jujitsu and into tattooing similarly. So I was hoping you could just kind of talk about apprenticeship as a whole, like in society as a person, the value of learning from people that know more than you and the humility that it takes to be able to do that effectively.
Yeah, I mean, that's the most important part. What you just said is being humble. And a lot of people, they just, it's hard for them to accept criticism. So to be able to have somebody tell you that you could be better and accept some constructive criticism, that's the first part of being better at, jujitsu or tattooing. And I did start both of them right around the same time. And I remember I also went to college. I took art classes in college, and then my ego would always get the best of me, and I'd be taking art classes, and the professor would give me some criticism, and even though I would kind of agree with what he said, I'd still be like, this guy doesn't know. He doesn't know what's up, dude. I'm the smart art genius guy, which is like, it was just my ego, me feeding into that. And really, I could have learned way much more in college if I would have just been able to humble myself and accept criticism, and I would have been able to like learn their techniques, and I could have applied it to whatever I thought my particular style was. And so me, I was so like hooked on oh, they don't understand me, they don't get me, I have like really great ideas, and maybe I did, but I you have to stop focusing on being an artist and focus on craftsmanship. And so I think a lot of young people focus on them being, so much style and so much being an artist and less on craftsmanship. And so I guess that applies in jiu-jitsu as well. A lot of people want to immediately start learning the craziest move and the weirdest techniques instead of really like focusing on having good triangles, good arm bars, and just really learning the fundamentals.
Why do you think
And
that
so I
is?
guess it's the same way for tattooing. A lot of people, they want to over stylize their tattoos right off the bat. They want to be like, okay, well, I'm the dude that does the wacky characters with the hat on or whatever. They want a certain gimmick, or they want a certain like over stylized approach instead of just taking your time and learning the fundamentals. And I guess being an apprentice, that's what you have to learn. You got to, like, when you're in the kitchen, you got to learn how to wash dishes first. And so in tattooing, for instance, you got to learn how to clean the shop. And in
Yeah.
jujitsu, you got to learn how to clean the mats, and you got to learn about hygiene and all of these things. And so you just got to be able to really be humble and be appreciative for the time, the first year or two where it's the hardest. Just being a good student. That's really difficult to do. And all of the great champions, I'm sure, have been great students.
What do you think about in either of those settings? Like, I guess whether it's a jujitsu setting in an academy or an apprenticeship where you're in a shop and you're around other people and you're around artists who've already established themselves and that's what they do for work and a living, about like tough love. Like how important is it to develop someone where you really expose them to the challenges of what you're learning? I guess in jujitsu, this could probably be equated to like getting smashed early on, and maybe in apprenticeship you could talk a little bit about that. But yeah, this idea of like tough love and that kind of hard set mindset for developing people into a skill set.
It's a really difficult thing to balance. Trying to figure out what's the right, when you're actually just hazing someone at some point, or when you're actually teaching them a valuable lesson, you know?
Yeah.
And so I think the most difficult, me being a teacher, the most difficult thing was to teach my daughter how to be a tattooer. And so it was really difficult balancing because I love my daughter. I never want to hurt her feelings, and I wanted to uplift her. So it was really difficult balancing being able to tell her, like, hey, you have to work harder. You're not working hard enough. Or she's really proud of a tattoo she did, and I have to tell her, well, this is how it could have been done better. And she is like such a beautiful person, but also very like fragile in a sense,
Hmm.
to a certain degree. And so I had to be able to like really walk that fine line of praising her and criticizing her. So yeah, I mean, you have to be tough with people. At the very least, you got to be honest with them. You just can't give everyone a pat in the back and tell them like how amazing they are.
Yeah.
Sometimes you got to just tell them how it really is. And so I'm not sure as far as jujitsu goes. The proof is on the mats. You don't really need your jujitsu instructor telling you suck. Like, you just got tapped, a bunch of
Right.
times by another white belt, dude. Like, you haven't been working as hard as that guy. That's what it really
Yeah.
comes down to, is who put in the hours. And so the amount of hours that you put in is always going to show, and that's never going to lie. In art, visual art context, it's a little bit different to tell somebody, because anybody could pat themselves on the back and say they're the best visual artist. In
Right.
jujitsu, if you want to say you're the best white belt, you're the best blue belt, where are the medals, dude? Let's see the medals.
When you're in an art setting, like I feel like with art, people show their art to people close to them first. And the problem with this is that people that are close to us love us, right? So they're going to tell you that they love what you did and that it's beautiful. So how do you find the right amount of criticism when you're developing as an artist? Who do you look to for real feedback that's actually going to help you grow as an artist, someone who wants to do it as a career, but also not get like frustrated and down and be like, hey, I'll never figure this out. I'm just a shitty artist. I suck. How do you like, who do you reach out to for those kind of bits of feedback so that you actually develop?
I think it's important to find artists that have a style that you would like to emulate or that you look up to, because the visual arts is so diverse. There's so much
Yeah.
going on in that world. And I think that's what I love about working within a smaller and smaller framework, is that, hey man, it's not like some abstract like, hey man, I'm just an artist, anything you do goes.
Right.
I prefer art where there's a certain amount of craftsmanship that goes along with what you're doing. And even with abstract art, there's a certain amount of craftsmanship, but it is a little bit more like open ended.
Yeah.
But in tattooing, you have to be able to pull a good line. You got to be able to pack in the colors, and the tattoo should look good in a couple years, you know? And so it's really specific in that sense that, you know, you have to yeah, like I said, focus on craftsmanship. And so you got to look up to certain people, and then ask them for criticism, because nobody wants to give it because they're afraid to hurt your feelings, you know. And so
Right.
they're gonna they're always gonna hey, what do you think about this? Oh, it's awesome. Hey, no man, but like, how could I make it better? You
Right.
have to have the courage to ask, to get not broken down, but really just, you know, tell you what they could do better. I offer that to a lot of people, you know, and very few people ever like hit me up about it.
You mean
Like
like
someone
you'll
suggested
finish
me
a
a
tattoo
tattoo, or
and be like, "Hey, straight up, honest feedback, like open book. What do you feel about this?" And very
very,
rarely you get constructive criticism.
very few people want it. Very few people want that, man. And so like whenever I offer that to a new tattooer, and I'm like, hey man, like if I have a friendship with these person and they're starting in their tattoo career, I always say like, well, if you ever have any questions about tattooing, man, like I'll tell you anything. Just ask.
Right.
And the percentage of people that actually like ask me questions is very, very little.
How do you account for originality? Like I've always so growing up skateboarding for years and having older friends that were starting to get tattooed when they were, in their late teens, in kind of a small town. I just always looked at tattooing as like these are like the coolest people. Like they're doing something that's against the grain. They're original. They've got their own style, and it just stuck out as this really cool art form to me. And as I've gotten older, and then I got started to get tattooed myself, you realize that there's like different styles of tattoos. There's individual artists, but it's harder and harder, I think, in anything to do something original, right? To actually be like stylistically the first one to come about something. So in a world filled with artists, and now we're in an age where people just go buy a gun and they open an Instagram account, funnel a bunch of followers in there, and they think that they're an accomplished artist inside of a year. How do you maintain originality, and how do you seek that in your medium?
Yeah, I think is definitely who you admire and who you look up to, but it all comes down to learning how to do the baby steps first, and really fine tuning that stuff to where it's like almost perfect, because nothing's ever going to be perfect, and then move on to the next small step that you're going to put into your toolbox. So it's learning how to draw waters. And so now that's going to take you another year of drawing in a sketchbook and learning how to draw waters really good. And then, okay, wow, I spent so much time doing that. And, but my girl heads look like they're ugly. And so now I got to practice to draw girl heads.
Yeah.
And you got to practice draw. There's no way you're going to put all those shit that you're mediocre at and put them into a fucking pot and you're gonna get some beautiful original art. It ain't gonna happen. So it's really important to drag it on. Don't try to be original. Just drag on the fundamentals and the craftsmanship as long as you can, and really fine tune all those small things. And then your originality, your personality is going to start shining little by little, and it's going to be very, very natural. And by the time people start recognizing you for being an original, it's because you did all the homework and you put in all the hours, you know. And so I guess the most difficult thing is don't jump the gun.
Yeah.
Don't try to be the wacky guy right off the bat. Don't try to be the guy that's doing like the most unique designs. Learn how to do the original good designs. And I promise you, if I do one of the most basic designs now, one of the most popular designs now, it'll be way different than what I did 5 years ago. It'll be way different than I did 10 years ago, and it'll obviously be way different than what I did 20 years ago when I first started tattooing. And so I could still, what I'm saying is to this day, 20 years later of tattooing, I'm still fine tuning my craftsmanship, and even the most simplest rows, I'm still making better. So all this thing about being original, it's like that shouldn't even be in someone's head when they're first starting. It shouldn't be in your head. Try not to even think in that sense, because you are an individual and you have all these experiences in life, and no matter what, your personality is going to shine through. No matter how subtle it
Yeah.
is, your personality and your approach to life is going to shine through in your art. So I feel like that's true when it comes to jujitsu, and it comes to visual art and any other medium.
That's one of the reasons I love talking to people like yourself who've actually dedicated like a big chunk of their life to something. Is it you're humble enough to be able to reflect on that from a from someone who's actually done it for so long, and done it for the right reasons too, to be able to look back and see it that way. Because I would never think of it like that. I would never think of like originality spawning actually out of the most basic parts. And now that you say that, I think about like when you watch like a really talented jiu-jitsu practitioner, they're doing the smallest things the best way. And it's like those little subtle movements that they make that eliminate space or that create more pressure. And then when you look at the kid who's on the mat with his phone out watching YouTube videos trying to replicate it on his homie, like it's trash. It's horrible jujitsu, right? It's that difference though of originality. What was your experience like, your individual experience like through your apprenticeship? How did you grow through all that?
Through my apprenticeship, I feel like I immediately try to be original. And
Mm,
so I fell flat on my face. Even when it comes to graffiti, I was like, well, let me learn how to do the craziest wild style pieces. Or in yeah, the only yeah, in art and tattooing, it was the same thing. I'm like, how could I just do the craziest tattoos? And now I look back at those tattoos, and they're just kind of a little embarrassing, like over stylized, like I said. And so I remember I did about 3 years learning how to do like street style tattooing when it comes to like cursive and old English and all of these things. And then I started to really be able to humble myself when I surrounded myself with people that were doing American traditional tattooing. And so there was Kaz, Tyler, Dan, Milford. These were people that were working really hard and trying to improve what they were doing. And I was able to like from a kind of from a distance or the corner of my eye type of thing, see how hard they were working, and then try to step my game up from there. And yeah, like I said, like eventually my own personality started shining through. And even now, I only do American traditional designs. For the most part, I do designs that already existed. And so when I stylize it, or when people say, damn, you got your own style, it's actually a design that's been done hundreds of times. It's just like the amount of black that I put in there, the color choices. These are things that are very subtle, but when you put all those small subtle things together, it ends up being something that's like, oh, that's a Sergio tattoo. Like when people see him out in the street, they're able to recognize it.
what do you think makes a good traditional tattoo, or a one that's worthwhile?
For my particular approach and my taste, it has to have a strong line, and it has to have a lot of black, almost borderline too much black, and then the color just has to be sprinkled in there. And one thing that I noticed that a lot of tattooers don't do, that I think there'd be better if there was less, um, if there was more color and black coming from each line. Each
Mm.
line that is on the tattoo should have color or shading or something coming off of it. And so sometimes I see people that do a tattoo, and there's so many lines that don't have no color and no black next to it, and it'll be all over the tattoo. And then so now the tattoo looks a little bit like fragile, or it looks unfinished. And that's something that's for me like really basic and fundamental to like what, for my approach, for my style, is what makes it strong. And that's what I see a lot of tattooers that they don't do that.
Yeah, I mean, I swore I would never get color ever, and then when I came to you, I was like, I can't not trust this guy. That's why I'm coming to him, right? Like I like the art. That's why I want him to do his art, and he likes the art this way. So why would I go to, you wouldn't take a Volvo to a Ford mechanic. It's like you got to let people do their thing. You got to let their style come through. And dude, I would have been so pissed if you let me walk out of there with a grayscale tattoo, because it just wouldn't have hit. And they're both like, I love them so much now because they are unique. And it's actually interesting you talk about the black, because I didn't get to talk to you about this before I got the tattoos, but that's something that I really love about both of them a lot, is that they're heavy dark with accents. That the accents fit so, like, so subtly and cool. And again, they're colors that I probably wouldn't have been like, oh, I wouldn't have picked them out of a palette, but
Yeah.
because you do what you do so well, they come through, and it works super well. So
Well, I
I'm like,
appreciate it, man.
I'm a
Yeah, I
huge
mean,
fan.
black and gray tattoos are amazing too, and I love doing those. But I never want people to like decide that, okay, this is what my whole body is gonna do. I don't want people to plan out their body so far ahead in advance, because we all change so much, you know. And so when I hear people that are like, "Well, I'm only gonna get black and gray for the rest of my life,"
Right.
of course, man. If that's really the approach, then I'm gonna respect it. But I always try to tell them like, well, don't decide who Abe's gonna be in 5 years right now, man.
Right.
You're deciding already for Abe in 5 years. Abe 5 years from now is gonna look back at you and be like, "Why'd you do this to me, dude?"
Right.
You know. And so I always try to talk to customers in that sense, like even if they have mostly black and gray, it's okay to put in a little bit of color in there, color tattoos as well. And even if you have all color tattoos, once in a while, black and gray one's okay. I guess basically like don't subscribe to your own self-imposed boxes that you put yourself in, or dogmas or doctrines or anything like that. I grew up in a very like religious household. And so the whole thing is about having these doctrines or dogmas that you have to follow. And so when I was able to get out of that type of way of thinking, I try to apply it to all forms of my life. And I try to encourage other people to be that way. Hopefully it makes them stronger.
What was that like growing up? Because I did not grow up in that type of setting at all. It was quite the opposite. It was like spirituality was very encouraged, or kind of like go out and figure out your own pathing. There was no implemented structure around religion, no views of God or anything like that. So I never came out of that, and a lot of friends and family in the community too. It was very subtle, if it was. What was it like
Yeah.
growing up inside a household where that was like a main vein?
Well, it was okay. But the thing is that if you train your mind to think a certain way, it's really difficult to start questioning yourself. That's the most
Yeah.
important thing, is trying to be able to question yourself. And it's strange because you don't want this insecure feeling within yourself, so you don't want to question yourself.
Right.
But also, for me, it was very beneficial. And I think, like being Mexican, you either grow up Catholic or Christian or Jehovah's Witness. I grew up Jehovah's Witness, and so there's like a lot of dogmas that go along with that, that we have to follow,
Yeah.
and a lot of rules and stuff. And so I just feel like it's important to be able to like be an individual
Mhm.
and know that it's because we always want to make our parents happy, or we always want to
For
make
sure.
the people that are above us happy. And so it's so difficult for Mexican people to like be able to think outside of the box in that sense. And I think the most important thing is, when it comes to the parents, that your parents are always going to end up loving you no matter what,
Yeah.
and no matter what decisions you make when it comes to religion. And so for me, it was that like, oh man, my relationship with God or my relationship with my parents is going to be tarnished if I do this or that. But ultimately, my parents accepted me for who I am and my approach to life. And so I always want to try to encourage people to do the same. And I made a movie last year, and it's going to be streaming in a couple. Probably, hopefully, in the next month or so, it's going to be streaming, and it's a lot of those themes that are in it,
Oh, dude,
because
I
I
love
just
it.
want to be able to empower people to think for themselves.
It's hard to do, man. It's hard when you grow up with just like inside of walls of something. Like, it's interesting what you say about the confidence. Like, to feel like you can step outside of that. That's even a big deal in and of itself. let alone to then take action on it and step out, beyond that. Was there anything when you look back to that growing up Jehovah's, was there anything that you kept, like as you departed from that kind of like belief system, the dogma within that? Was there anything that you held on to where you're like, hey, this actually kind of serves me? This is something I value. I'm going to keep this in my life. I want to instill this in my children's life.
Yeah, 100%, man. I'm very grateful for that upbringing. It was difficult at some points, but I think one of the main things is being willing to be subversive in the society, you know. And so when I was a little kid, being Jehovah's Witness, they wouldn't allow you to put your hand over your heart um, and pledge your allegiance to the flag. And so I don't know about now, but back then when you're a little kid, at least once a week or every day,
Yeah.
everyone stands up and pledge their allegiance to the flag. And so I was like in first, second grade. And they said, my mom would be like, no, you only pledge your allegiance to God. That's the only person you pledge your allegiance to. And so for me to be first, second grade, everyone stands up, everyone puts their hand over their heart, and I have to convince myself to not do that. And so I have my hands to my side, being respectful, looking at the flag, but not putting my hand over my heart. I was the weirdo. I was a
Yeah.
weirdo in like elementary school. So for an elementary school kid to start developing these things where it's okay to be the subversive one or the different one is a very powerful thing that I carried with me to this day. And I mean, I've always spoke my mind, and I've always went against the grain, and I'm very proud of that. And it has to do with that type of upbringing, being Jehovah's Witness.
Isn't that wild how early on, like something that sticks with you your whole life, it's like a staple of who you are, everything about yourself that, maybe even if someone asked your closest friends, like, hey, describe Sergio to me, they might describe you in a way that was the result of something that happened when you were in second grade. Like that just bam, that's part of who you are for like the rest of your life. It's crazy, man. It's why it's so important. I think, with the message that you're delivering to people, like you can be this way, you can think outside the box.
Yeah,
Hopefully there's some kid who, he'll watch this movie when it comes out and that hits him, and it hits him the way that hit you when you were in second grade. And then forever that person's life's potentially changed for the better because they saw something that clicked. Like you're such a sponge when you're a little kid. You're taking everything in, everything.
yeah,
And for it
yeah, dude.
to
I mean,
to come out like that's cool.
yeah, dude. I always want to like encourage. I always like the customers that come in shy and they don't know what they want, and then I try to like give them a little bit of guidance because they're open to that, and then they get one tattoo, another tattoo. By the fifth, sixth tattoo, when they walk in, they walk in like they own the place, dude.
Yeah.
And you can see they have a little different aura about them, and they're way more confident. And not only because of the shop, but because they're wearing all these tattoos, and they had to take some like some power over themselves and who they are. They decided, yeah, I'm gonna get that skull on my arm, or I'm gonna do this, or and they had to like basically it's empowering. Getting a tattoo, it's empowering because you take a bold choice, and now you get to wear that choice for the rest of your life. And then I don't know, man. I think it just makes me so happy that the service that we provide, most of the time people feel empowered by it, and I see them grow, I was telling somebody recently that a lot of our customers come in 18 years old when it's their first tattoo, and then now they'll be like in their 20, 25, 26, and they're such a different person from
Yeah.
18 to 25. They'll be so different, and I just feel really like blessed to be able to see all these young people grow as they're going through their lives, and also collecting tattoos and stuff. And it's kind of like when you're at your house and you mark your growth on the wall with
Yeah.
a pencil as you get taller and taller.
Yeah.
Yeah, it kind of feels like that with each tattoo. I see people grow and go through different stages in their life. It's really cool, man. Really a blessing.
Well, it's a unique thing. Like there's commitment just in general. Commitment as a concept is very tough for people to get on board with. And there's so many avenues in life where you can get off that track, right? Where you're not really you can break up with the person, you can leave them, you people get divorced 85% of the time, like whatever it is. There's so many off ramps for your commitment. With tattoos, granted, you don't, get it removed later or something like that, but it's a decision that, like, from that moment on, that thing's on your that it's on your body. It's art on your body. And that's a unique thing to decide to do, and then love it so much you want to come back. That's what I think. That's one of the things that makes tattooing so cool and so special, is no matter who you are, no matter who you are, no matter how rich you are, how poor you are, whatever, everyone had to make that decision right before the needle touched their arm that they were going to fucking do it, and then they did. That's
Yeah,
cool, man. That's really cool.
yeah, definitely is something empowering. And then sometimes when people were like, oh, I don't know, man, this it's gonna be on me forever. And I'm like, well, how long is that, dude? Really, how long is that, man? It ain't that long, bro. We're only here for, if we're lucky, 100 years, and 100 years in the grand scheme of things ain't shit, man.
Nothing, bro.
Most people are in their 20s. Let's say we got 80. If you're 30s, it's a very, very short life. So might as well just have fun, and just decorate your body,
have you
especially
have
if
you
you're
ever
coming
had
to
an
a good tattoo
instance
shop, or you know.
have you ever had an instance where someone came in and you had to decline or like turn down what they wanted to get?
Yeah, I've said no to a couple of things. A good example is a girl just came out of a relationship and she wanted to get trust no man, for instance. Or even if a dude wants to get something
Yeah,
that says trust no bitch
yeah,
or something like that. I'm like, I don't want to do the tattoo. It's too negative.
yeah.
And really, like, what is that going to say when you have a daughter or a son or your next partner, and you have a tattoo that says trust no man or trust no bitch? It's not going to be a good feeling. I wouldn't trust someone that has a tattoo that says trust no man or trust no woman.
Right.
So
That's
anything that has too much negative connotations like that, um I try not to do it. Yeah.
that's got to.
There's
I would.
other things that I have my personal reasons why I don't feel like doing them, but that's a good example. Yeah.
It's got to be hard when you're a new artist, right? Because you want to like there's a completely different example that's not artistic, but at this point in my career, training clients, like there's certain personality types that I don't want to take on, because I recognize that if we train, I'm spending multiple hours a week with this person one on one. And so if it's a bad fit from the get go, it's a bad investment of my time and their money and their time. And I can kind of, at this point, having done it for, 14 years, I can see that. I can recognize it. But when you're newer, you want to build your client list. Like, you got to make money, you got to make a living. So you want to like take everything on that comes your way, and you want to reach out and develop clients. So when you're younger in your career, is it harder to make those kind of decisions, to turn down work, or who do you look to for guidance on that kind of thing?
Yeah, I think it is a lot more difficult when you first start and you're trying to build clientele. But I would just encourage people to just keep going in that direction. If you don't want to work with somebody, or you don't like an idea, then be honest with the client and just tell them, like, that that's not for me. Maybe someone else will do that better, or maybe you should get it done by somebody that really wants to do it. I mean, money is comes and goes, man. We're here in the United States of America, man. If you're going to be homeless anywhere in the world, this is probably the best place to do it.
Right.
But it ain't going to happen, dude. We all have friends and family around us that aren't going to let us be homeless. Most of us do, obviously. But yeah, I mean, I'd rather take the loss. There's I could be making a lot more money at this tattoo shop if I just did everything that came through the door. But working hard and developing these relationships and getting the best clients that get cool tattoos. Everyone that works here is so happy to work here, man, because I give them the power to say no to any customer. Like, dude, if you don't like a customer, you have to let them know why what is it about them as a customer that makes them not the right person for you to do the tattoo. And so really developing a way to express yourself as much as you can, so you don't deal with the customer and you keep it all in, and then they leave and you're like, man, fuck that guy, he did this
Yeah,
and
that's no
that,
good.
and blah 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 blah. It's like the sooner I could express myself, I want to do it with the customer in front of them, because if I do it when they're gone, then I'm a coward,
Totally.
and I don't like the feeling of being a coward. And so people are like, dang, you're so blunt with your customers. Or, oh shit, here comes Sergio, he's going to say some crazy shit. And it's just like, dude, I'm not trying to say crazy shit. It's just, I want to be honest with these people because I want to still respect them. So as long as I'm able to tell you, hey man, I don't like the way you came into the shop and started puffing your vape peach flavored vape pen all up in everyone's face, dude. Like, don't do that shit no more. Um, Instead of
I'd love to
like
just be a fly
being
on the wall
quiet
for that.
about it, and then they leave, and I'm like, oh, that guy, I fucking, he's so annoying. But no, dude, I don't want to do that shit. So most of the time, you get what you get, and I'm gonna be straight up with everybody. You know?
You know what I think that is, though? I think part of that, I think that's just confidence as a person. Like, if you develop that over life, but also, I mean, something like martial arts gives you that, to be face to face with a human, just in general, and tell them honest something, whether it's like, any kind of feedback that's straight up, like looking them right in the eyes. I think a lot of people in life don't feel comfortable doing that because that's like, I mean, that's like primal confrontation, right? That's the moment where after that moment, you have no idea how things are going to go in the history of the world, right? This is obviously it's a conversation, so you can assume you're not going to be like, "Hey, man, no vaping in my shop." He's going to be like, "Really? Well, fuck you," and pull out a gun. That's probably not going to happen.
Yeah, yeah,
But it's that point when, like, maybe he does step in you and say, "I'm going to vape wherever I want," right?
right.
That's if you're not ready for that kind of exchange, I think a lot of people shy away from that, and then they feel empowered with the, man, fuck that guy, I was about to walk up there and, like, oh,
Yeah,
good thing I didn't sleep good last night or whatever, and so they're
yeah,
like, reel it back. But that's part of going back to what you were saying with watching these people come in and develop this sense of self through tattooing. You get the 18-year-old who's in there, they get their first tattoo and they're kind of like this, and they develop that persona later on. It's one of the most beautiful things to watch happen in a jiu-jitsu academy. Is you get someone in, they come in their first day, they're like, and those are the people are they're gonna vibe with it. They're gonna get a lot out of it because they're starting in that kind of shell. Like, it took a lot of courage for them to even walk in the door, and you watch them kind of blossom into this, like, they start stand up a little bit taller. That they'll roll with anyone because they have no ego about losing because they're just excited to be there. And
yeah.
then you see them later and they're a purple belt and you're like, damn, dude, you were just like not even a human before you walked in here, and look at you now. Like, it's one of the most beautiful things I think to watch happen.
Dude, that's so cool, man. I got chills just thinking about my friend. Her name is Chris, and I
Yeah,
remember her as a white belt coming into the gym, and she looked like a soccer mom in a way, like a little bit of soccer mom vibe. Amazing person, and she just had like a shy persona about her,
yeah,
and it was with bare submissions, all mostly dudes, and everybody's going hard, and Barrett was stern, very pretty stern back then, and he wasn't like joking around, cracking jokes all the time or playing hip hop music or nothing. It was just like we are just training. It was like a pretty intense environment. And so seeing her stick with it, 6 months later she was still there. I was like, oh shit. And then now she's a black belt in jiu-jitsu.
yeah,
Powerful person. And I didn't think she was even going to make it to purple belt, and like I was
yeah.
like, she'll never be, oh, that's cool that she got her blue belt, but she'll never be a purple belt. And she just kept training, kept coming back, and kept kicking acid, and she's winning medals, and she's a black belt now, and she's so powerful. I'm really proud of her.
In your eyes, like, you have quite a bit of experience. You happen to have created a wonderful, like, in a way, an apprenticeship and a mentorship with Barrett, and you've been with him from white all the way to black belt. It's rare. It's even more rare these days, given how many different schools there are all over the country, and the fact that people generally move more than they used to. So you're in a position where your relationship with your professor is super deep. Like, he's seen you from start to finish. Uh, you guys are close. You've competed alongside each other. You both still compete. You're not like hanging it up. So when you look at kind of the lifespan of the jiu-jitsu practitioner, let's say, why do you think that so many people struggle sticking with it past blue belt?
I think that a lot of times people put too much pressure on themselves to be like the world champ or win the medal, or when it comes to the competition circuit.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I think that's why people like stop doing it. For me at least, I've seen a lot of people because I like to compete, and for me, it's like I want to win medals and I want to test myself. Even if it's Masters 3, Masters 4, I want to keep competing. Um, and so also the idea that it's okay to take a break. So
Mm.
I've taken right now the longest break I've taken in jujitsu. About a year ago, I got injured. I had to take a couple months off, and then in December, I was able to compete at Worlds, and I got silver for Masters 3 Nogi, and I was really proud of that.
Yeah.
And then my son started boxing, so I took a break from jujitsu because I was going with my son to the gym, watching him box, and so it's like interesting for me that I'm doing a podcast about jujitsu and I'm not even active right now. It's been like a month. I mean, I've only trained like 3 times in the past month or whatever. But I know in my heart I love jujitsu and I'll always be doing jujitsu. And so I never say like, oh, I stopped doing jujitsu. I'm taking a short break from jujitsu. I want to compete. I want to compete at Masters 5. I want to
Yeah.
like keep doing it. And so I think it's people need to feel that it's okay to take a break, even if it's a 6 month break or a 1 month break. There's always, hey, come on, you got to come back to the gym. You got to come back to the gym. Yeah, you do got to come back to the gym, but it's okay to take a break sometimes. Life happens, and even if you took 2 years off, it's jujitsu's always there, and you're always able to come back to it.
It's interesting you say that because I got hurt in February, and that was the first time since I started in 2019 that I took any time off longer than like a weekend because of travel, and it was like deliberate time off. Like I had to let this thing heal, and that was the first time I ever saw jujitsu from a withdrawn perspective. Because I've only been doing it since 2019, so I don't have a lifespan yet of learning all the lessons. But I looked at it in that amount of time, and I was like, "Whoa, I'm going to do this the rest of my life." So if I take 30 days off, who gives a shit, right? But feel that pressure to like, every day that I'm not on the mats, everyone's getting better than me. Like all that is just noise, right? And then you
Yeah,
realize
dude.
that, like, oh, well, if you look at it that way, the break's fine because it's your body's actually going to feel better. Then you're going to come back and you're going to be able to be a better teammate. You're going to be able to be someone who's more fertile for learning, and like you'll be in a better position anyway. What injury did you suffer?
Well, I had a knee injury. It was like the inside of my knee. I don't know what that one's called.
Mm-hmm.
Like the
Like
inside,
MCL.
like near your thigh. What is it?
Yeah, like MCL.
Yeah, yeah, it was that. But I didn't even get no surgery or nothing. But I was I was doing this super fight, and it was against a really strong black belt, and I heard it tear, and then I still finished the match, and I was able to win. And I had so much adrenaline that I'm just standing, and I'm like, hell yeah! And then by the time I got home, I couldn't even move my leg. And so
Yeah.
I had to definitely take some time off after that. Um, it's okay to take time off. Yeah, a lot of people when they first start doing jujitsu, they're so passionate, they're so in love with it, and they're training so much. And then as soon as they don't keep up that same pace, they feel like they're not a failure at jujitsu, but like, well, my time has passed, and I guess I'm kind of over it. I'm gonna start, fly fishing or bowling or whatever. But I don't know, dude. I think it's just it has to be okay for you to take a little break. Don't feel bad. You don't got to keep that same crazy pace for the rest of your life. You could slow down. Right now, I'm in slow down phase, but I already know as soon as the next competition comes up or Masters is going to come up, I want to do a camp again and really start training hard.
Yes, I've watched several of your matches that you've done. I was watching one with Diego Lopez, which I thought was cool because I think it was like 6 years ago. And I just watched him in the UFC recently, and it was rad. I mean, it was a full scrap. You guys were going hard, the whole time. When
That
you're,
was nuts.
you're fighting. I mean, we'll use him as an example, right? The people that you've done these super fights against and these matches, they're no slouches. You're compete. It's not like you just did the local Naga thing, right? Like you're up against some of the best people in the sport, and then people that have gone on and competed in UFC, and not only competed, but then I mean he's a hopeful right now. I think people kind of are picking him to be the next belt contender, and he's extremely fun to watch and exciting. What's your preparation like when you're going into those matches? Because these are not you're not just rolling into the weekend jiu-jitsu tournament to test where your skills at. These are things you have to prepare for. You have to get ready for these matches. You have to think about your opponent because they are super technical. You guys are all obviously, black belt level, but it's a different level. It's a different level to this shit, as they say. So how do you get ready for those matches? What are you thinking about in your head, and how are you preparing your body?
Yeah, I think what's important, and a lot of times people don't think that way, is that you have to think that you're a human being and you have the potential to beat anybody. And so as soon as I start looking up to somebody too much or idolizing someone in a sense, then you're never going to get to that level because you see them as something almost not even human. But these are regular human beings that work hard every day. And so even when I was a purple belt, I remember telling a couple of my teammates like, "Hey man, you keep talking about that black belt, how much you look up to him and how much you're like kind of idolizing this person, dude. And we can't think that way. I know we're only purple belts and they're black belts, but you can't think about that because one day you're going to have to compete against him when you're a black belt. And so
Right.
stop talking about these dudes as if they're superhuman people. There are just regular people that are working harder than you and that have accomplished more than you, but you have it within you to be able to accomplish this. And so I've always tried to think that way, even as a blue belt, purple belt, going up the ranks. And so in preparation to a fight, already as a black belt in preparation for a fight, knowing that they're usually younger than me, they're usually stronger than me. I don't, I try not to let it get in my head that I'm meant to lose. I always think in my head, I'm meant to win the upset. I'm meant to get the upset, you know? And I've always, because of my lifestyle, I've always trained less than some of these champions. And, I'm usually the older dude in the competition. It's just trying to be creative, and I've been developing my game for so long that I want to in like make sure that I'm able to like activate my game in the match
Yeah.
before they activate their game. Whoever starts the process of their game first usually ends up winning, you know?
Right.
And so I don't want to start thinking about like, oh, I got to watch out for this from them and thinking defensively. I want to think offensively. And that's always usually my approach. Like, no matter what, I'm going to get to Sergio guard. If I get to Sergio guard, then I'm able to
It's
like
over.
step by step get the W, you know? And so that's usually how it happens with Diego. Man, I had him in my position. I was cranking that arm, dude, and it did not break. And you can see it in his face. He's grimacing, and
Yep.
he gets out, man, and he beat me, fair and square. Super tough dude, and I'm just honored that I've been able to compete. I'm like
Fuck
the
yeah.
one of the most successful part-time jiu-jitsu practitioners in the history of jiu-jitsu, man. I've always did it part-time, like I take my kid to school,
Yeah.
and then I would go train jiu-jitsu for a little bit, and then go tattoo all day, and then go home, hang out with my kids again, run, and then go paint graffiti or go hang out with my friends and do the whole process over. Back when I was competing against the highest level of black belts back then. And
How important do you keep up your, like when you're in camp? There's another thing I want to talk about that I can't forget about, so I'm going to log
okay,
that.
let's
But
hear it.
when you're when you're in camp, do you keep up your running? I think you and I talked about this, and like it sparked something in me, and I just picked up my running shoes the other day and started like doing it again because I'm like, man, you got to run like all the time. It's different.
I didn't run. Like 3 weeks before my competition, I'll start running.
Gotcha.
But I think Marcelo Garcia was saying that his main thing is just training all the time.
Yeah,
And I was
you
really
got to train.
inspired by Marcelo Garcia. His workout is like him training, just do more rounds and do harder, faster rounds. And but when it comes to MMA, I did a couple MMA fights back in the days. I did 4 fights. For those, obviously, it's a different type of muscles that you're working out. So I definitely would run a lot more for that. But when it comes to jujitsu, my main thing is doing more rounds, doing tougher rounds, making my techniques sharper, and going up against diverse body types and diverse skill sets.
You see, yeah, you stepped in the octagon, you stepped in the boxing ring, you stepped on the jiu-jitsu match, all in competitive settings. That's something special. How did stepping into an octagon feel? What was the difference from your experience boxing, amateur boxing, and then getting in there where so much more is possible on how you can get attacked and how you're forced to defend?
I think I remember being so nervous my first match, dude. And Barrett, right before the match, he could tell that I was getting pretty nervous, and he's like, "Hey, Sergio, it's just a jujitsu match. It's
Yeah.
just a jujitsu match." And as soon as he said that, I processed what he said, and like it really sunk into my brain. Like it's a jujitsu match where someone's gonna be trying to knock you the hell out, and so it's okay.
High
All I had to
stakes.
do was figure out a way to close the distance.
Yeah.
And as soon as I closed the distance, my wrestling wasn't that good. I'd let them take me down. I would fight it a little bit, but then I'd let them take me down, and then I would just wrap them up, put them in a triangle, or. And so this was like a long time ago, maybe like 10 years ago now. But I had 4 professional matches, and they were all. I was able to finish them all with submissions. And it
Do you,
was that type of mentality, is just thinking like it's just a jujitsu match. I barely threw any punches any of my fights.
well, I mean, that's a perfect example. We go back to UFC one. That's a perfect example of jujitsu working in a real setting, right? Like this is unpredictable. You don't are you going to catch an uppercut on the way in to get your underhooks? Like you don't know, and then you prove 4 times that your jujitsu skill supersedes that and is effective in what I think most of us as practitioners hope would be the case, right? Is that if something ever were to happen, you could carry yourself enough to either get out of the situation and leave, or subdue the person long enough for other people to arrive, something like that. Which that brings up the you happen to actually have a real life example also outside of the octagon, outside of the boxing ring, and off the mats of catching someone breaking into your home and in real life using jujitsu to effectively stop the person, not injure them. Although you let that guy know in the video, you let him know what you were about to do if he didn't stop moving. So
Yeah,
can you
yeah.
can you talk me through this? Like, what was that day like?
Well, he broke into my dad's house. It was the middle of the day. I was on my way to work, and then yeah, he came out, and I was like, "What are you doing on my dad's property?" And he's like, "Oh, I'm just walking through the property. I'm sorry. Could I go out through the back?" And then he went out through the back, and then I looked at the window. I noticed he had ripped the window open, and so that's when I knew that this guy had broken into my dad's house. My dad was inside of the house while that dude was in there as well,
And he didn't
but I
know that
didn't
he was there.
know what had happened. Yeah, my dad was in the house, and so but I didn't have time to like check on my dad. It was either check on my dad, see if he's okay, or make sure that I catch the dude.
Yeah.
And so I was standing there trying to figure out, do I call for my dad? Do I chase this guy? Because I noticed that he started running. And so my instincts told me that if I let this guy get away, and I just to make sure that my dad's okay, I'm never going to be able to forgive myself. And I'm such a paranoid person that I'm going to be thinking like, this guy probably lives in the neighborhood, dude. I'm probably
Right.
running into him all the time. The guy that broke into my dad's house could have killed my dad is just cruising in my neighborhood. I have to catch this fucking guy.
Yeah.
And so I'm wearing flip flops. I run and I chase him for like a block and a half, and finally he gassed. He could have had a gun or a knife, so it was kind of a sketchy choice that I made.
For sure.
But I came up to him. I grabbed him by his shirt. I was like, "You gonna come with me?" He's like, "I didn't do nothing, you know." And then we came back to my dad's house. Thankfully, my dad was outside watering his lawn. Like he had no idea that this dude was in the house while he was in the house as well.
No way.
And I was like, Dad, and my dad seen that I was grabbing this guy. He's like, "What's going on, son?" And I was like, "This fucking guy was in your house right now." He's like, "What?" And then my dad was like, "How old are you?" Because my dad was a school counselor. He's a very generous dude. He's very kind to people, even troubled youth. You know what I mean? He's
Yeah.
dealt with it. And he's like, "Well, how old are you?" He's like, "I'm 23." He's like, "You're going to fucking jail." Because if he would have said he was 17, he would have been like, "Well, let's go talk to your parents,"
Right.
something
Right.
like that. He's like, "You're a grown ass man. You're going to jail." And right when he said that, he tried to fight. He tried to like get away from me and fight me. And so I like threw him on the ground, put him in a triangle. And I always thought to myself, if I'm ever in that situation, I'll say, "Yeah, I'll put him in a triangle, start fucking elbowing this guy, blood everywhere, and I'm gonna
Yeah.
feel great." And I had him in the triangle, and I was either gonna break his arm or put him to sleep or something. But I'm like, well, I feel like I have him. I feel like
Yeah.
I'm like controlling this dude, and so I just couldn't get myself to start elbowing this fool's fucking face in. But it just seemed like unnecessary. And
Well,
so yeah, I'm just happy it worked out that way. The cops showed up, and even the cops were like, "Bro, you should have broke that fool's arm. What do you like? What are you being nice to him for?" But it wasn't that I was being nice. I wasn't gonna get a kick out of like doing extra harm to this person.
right.
And
I,
I feel like I'm glad I was able to. I didn't know that was who I was,
yeah.
and so I'm glad I was put in that situation. And I feel like we all think we know who we are until we're in a situation like that, and then you really find out who you are. And so I'm just happy I was able to do that because I do have regrets in my life, like, oh, I should have this one time that this guy checked me, I should have done this,
Yeah.
or man, that one time that this person disrespected my friend, I should have acted a certain way. I'm just happy everything worked out the way it is, and I don't know. I mean, I feel like you got to learn jujitsu to be prepared for anything, and you got to be able to defend your friends and your family when they're in trouble, and not just your friends and family. If you see an innocent person getting beat up, or a man beating up a woman or something like that, I think there's something very powerful about feminine energy, and there's something very special about masculine energy. And if you think of yourself as a man, then part of your job as a man is to defend women and children and people that are like meek or weak or unable to defend themselves.
I fully concur on that. With that video, you know, it's so it's so cool because you're using a technique that is probably taught, within the first month of starting jujitsu. So going back to this idea of originality basics, right? It's like, granted, it was kind of like an inverted head triangle, but you're using a basic position that's taught on day one. You find out who you really are, and in this position, you have the clarity to be able to talk to the guy and say, "Hey, you know, in in lesser words, like, I'm gonna snap your arm if you move, so don't move," right? And
Yeah.
he's like, he's all like stuck in your legs. He's like, "I'm not gonna," he's like, "I'm good, I'm good, I'm not gonna do anything." And it's such a good example of jujitsu working, but also I think it shows that that thing in you that you didn't just drop elbows on this guy's head for 5 minutes shows also some of like the philosophical evolution of the martial artist, right? Like, you knew you had the guy, so what's there left to do other than exactly what you did? And you protected your dad. You protect your household. You also protected the future opportunity that, like you said, if this guy's some creepo who's cruising around your neighborhood, that he's not coming back either. That guy's not going to come back to your house. And people talk a lot about what they would do if X, Y, or Z all the time. You hear people talk about all the time. Few people ever get the opportunity to find out who they really are in those situations. And I think it's an incredible representation of the martial artist community and jiu-jitsu community that you acted the way that you did, but also a beautiful demonstration of doing it the right way. And where I meant to wonder, like, how long had you been training when that happened?
I think at the time I must have still been a brown belt, or maybe I had already gotten my black belt. Yeah, so I had been
It's a
training for a
split.
long time. So
It's
maybe
like
blue belt Surge would have just beat the crap out of that guy.
for sure,
But
for
'cause I'm
sure.
like,
Are you
oh, I just
kidding me,
learned
dude?
how to like, yeah. And blue belt me, I was doing MMA, training MMA every day.
Yeah,
You know, I had a certain amount of aggression, but I think as a black belt, I definitely was way more mellow now. You know, like super chill. I don't even like watching violence on TV, man. Like it doesn't even like, or I don't like watching street fights on, you
yeah,
know, or
yeah.
like on Instagram or something. That just freaks me out. I'm like, man, these are two people that don't know what the hell they're doing, and they think they're having a good time, but maybe somebody could hit their head on the concrete and die right now, and
Dude,
I just don't get a
it's
kick out of
so
that shit.
fuck, man. It's so funny you say that because whenever I talk to people who've trained for a long time, they all share this sentiment. Like, you actually know how bad it could go on accident. The frat bros at college, dude, they just think that no matter where they are, when it happens, fights are just safe and you just go 10 out of 10, balls to the wall and everyone's fine. It
Yeah,
doesn't take much for someone to get paralyzed on accident, dude. It really
no,
doesn't, especially when you're not in an academy with 4-inch mats and padded walls. I mean, we all get
so
fucked up
fragile.
just training with people that we know, right? When you're out in whatever in the street corner, and it could be either way, right? It could happen against you and you slip off the curb, you didn't know it was back there, you roll your ankle, and now you're in a really bad situation. So
Yeah, man.
it's always good to hear from people that have been training for a long time. Like you see it, it's like that's not the spot, man. It's like
Yeah,
anxiety
dude.
ridden.
I've come out of a bar with my homies, dude, and someone's a little bit disrespectful or did something, and they really want to fight this dude, you know, and it was like there was a situation where it was like four of us and four of those other guys, and it was like, cool, we got Sergio here and all of us, and we're gonna fight them, and it's gonna be a big brawl. And everyone, I feel like at the moment, people were so disappointed in me that I was like, I don't want to do this, dude. We're not gonna fight these guys. There's no reason to
Yeah,
fight these guys. This is ridiculous. We're not gonna fight them. And then one of my friends, dude, was going through like an emotional time, you know? And then finally he starts crying and he's like, dude, my mom is going through this and my parents and this and that. So he was going through all types of other emotional shit within him. And his goal was to take it out on those people that insulted him, you know?
yeah,
And, so those people were going to suffer for his pain. Um, and I felt bad because I didn't let him do that. But I feel like I said, it wasn't those guys that insulted him that
right.
he want. That's not why he wanted to fight. It wasn't the insult. It was all this other pain that he had inside that he wanted to let out on somebody, you know. And so most of the time, when people are excited about being violent towards someone else, it ain't that other person, you know. It's all this other shit that they're going through. And I don't know, man. Sometimes we got to just self-reflect and find other ways to release that anger, you know.
That's why another reason why jujitsu is so great. One, I think a lot of people realize they don't like getting punched in the face really fast when they start sparring, right? So jujitsu gives this other opportunity without that type of contact where you can kind of max out your aggression if you want, provided you have, people that you trust that you train with and you guys all got a good thing going. But it's interesting, you can see, I think, especially with newer practitioners that start training jiu-jitsu, when someone's rolling emotionally, like they got some shit going on in their life. You can
I
see
hate
it.
that.
It's crazy. And they're all tense and they gas out quick. It's like that. The worst time to fight anything is when you're
Yeah,
super emotionally charged up. It's
no.
horrible.
Like hit the bag, dude. Don't make somebody else deal with your shit like in a physical sense because you could really hurt somebody, you know. And that's how I mean we hear about it at gyms all the time. There's always that fucking aggro guy that maybe he did some stare. He's on the juice or something, or maybe not even that. But like you said, they're just going through a lot at home or something, and that's a dangerous situation, you know. And what a irresponsible thing to be going into the mat knowing that you have a temper and you're having a horrible day and now you're making everybody else deal with your shit, you know. It's so irresponsible, and it's really important to self-reflect and not put somebody in that situation, you know.
Yeah, it seems that from listening to you speak on other podcasts and stuff that you just stumbled into such a good environment with Baret. Like that, the way that you talk about that academy just sounds like it was such a good fit for you, for sure, but also under his leadership. That the way that he runs his academy, the way that he leads people, truly is special. What do you say to someone who maybe they're a little bit caught up? You know, sometimes gyms can get real culty, and sometimes you can be in a setting that like it's definitely not the right spot for you. So how do you think people should handle that?
I think you got to have the courage to go to a different gym, dude. It's okay to go to a different gym. When I first started doing jujitsu, I'm like, no, man, you got to stick with where you start. And if you don't, then you're a traitor and you're a piece of shit and all that stuff. But not every teacher is for everyone, you know? And I think it's important because as a student, you're putting yourself in such a vulnerable position
Yeah,
and you're taking guidance, unquestioned guidance from an individual. And so you have to be able to have pride in your teacher. Not to say that you're going to look at this person as if they're a perfect individual. We're all flawed characters, and no man is, no man is like that superior to another man. And like I said, we're all flawed. But yeah, you gotta pick a good leader. You got to pick a good leader, and you have to be able to believe in the person that's teaching you. And they're teaching you something super important, and they're trying to teach you to evolve physically and mentally, and in that sense, evolve as a human being. And so you want someone that's on the same path of evolution, that is trying to better themselves as well and tries to carry themselves. Because you're a teacher, you got to carry yourself with a certain amount of like a good moral compass or a good person of character. And so it's important to have a person like that above you that you're gonna in a way subjugate yourself to, you know.
yeah, yeah. Having quality leadership and a good mentor in any capacity is of serious value. It's hard to come by though. You know, hard to come by in any art form,
It
in any
is.
capacity where you're learning to have a good coach, someone who's really invested in you. It's a challenge, but as the athlete or the person, you got to be aware of that and what you're looking for. The the thing that I wanted to ask you about that it slipped my mind a while ago, but I wanted to ask you about graffiti because I've like again ever since growing up skateboarding, right? I've been around graffiti my whole life and don't understand it at all. And I'm wondering, is there like some sort of communication that goes on between the art form of graffiti? Like obviously it's put on trains and open walls and buildings and it's so cool and intricate and beautiful, but I understand none of it. Like if you're walking by a wall and you see a piece of art, can you pick out the artist? Can you pick out like where they're from or that style? Like what is being communicated under the surface with graffiti art?
I think graffiti it's its own language. It's its own language, but even if you see another language, you could still appreciate the beauty of it.
Mm,
And so for people to say they enjoy graffiti, if they really want to start learning about how to appreciate it, I feel like you should learn to appreciate the little tags that you see on the side of your newspaper thing or on a green box. Try to like read a name and see and try to see if you notice that same little name somewhere else, because that is the foundation of graffiti is the little tags. And so that could be a little 15-year-old kid or it could be a 45-year-old man that's writing their word, because it's not their government name, it's not their name that the parents gave you, it's just a word that you chose to write. It could be funny, it could be tough. And the way that people develop that signature is something interesting. And there's very stylized way of writing. It's like when you see Japanese kanji calligraphy ink paintings, you can't read it, but you
mm,
understand that there's something beautiful, and it has to do with the hand movement and the brushstroke. And so I'm not talking about these beautiful spray paint murals, a
no,
realistic
no.
face, or
Yeah.
these 20 color pieces. I'm talking about single tags, just the word. And so try to look at those words and try to appreciate that and know that it's just a person that's trying to communicate with another graffiti writer, you know. And there's a something very human about it, and it's something that has to do with at the root of it started off as lower class thing where it was people from the ghetto, people that are poor. That was the only way, that the only tools that they had to express themselves, and you're able to communicate and create an artistic community within that, and start from there. If you really want to learn about graffiti and appreciate graffiti, it's one of the biggest art forms in the whole world, and it's something that was started in America, developed in America, just like skateboarding, just like hardcore music, punk rock, and all that shit. um, there's that type of undercurrent to that,
Yeah.
and take pride in it, and take pride that it was started in our country, man. What a beautiful thing, you know, and was is fucking spread out all over the world. So I would really hope that more and more people start trying to understand graffiti and appreciate it.
When you're walking, I think about all these just like different places I've traveled in the world, and you're 100% right. It transcends different cultures, right? You can be in Spain, you're going to see graffiti. You can be in Amsterdam, you see graffiti. When you're going by, one thing that always sticks out to me as someone, again, who's like completely ignorant to the art form and really doesn't understand that much about it, I'm like, damn, how the hell did they get there? Like, you look up and it's on the backside of some overhanging thing, and I'm like trying to trace back the route, and I'm like, dude, this guy's a rock climber with like Spider-Man cups on to something. And I'm like, that's amazing. So not only did they do this, I'm assuming at night, because there's no fucking way you're scaling that wall in the middle of the day. It's someone's going
For
to call the
sure.
cops. So you're doing it in the dark. You're doing it, bringing all your stuff up there. Then you have the like clarity to not get freaked out that you're like 100 feet off the ground, to paint this huge, beautiful piece and then go away. And like, no, people know you did it, but no one knows you did it, because it's not like you leave a photo of yourself. It's not like you sign
Yeah.
the thing, or maybe you do, but it's just like independent, extremely high risk, beautiful art. So is there in the culture of graffiti art, is there like scale to the, maybe like the risk that someone, does that impact the art, the risk that they were willing to take to do it, or is
Um,
it
I think for certain groups within this graffiti culture, it is that, you know. I'm able to appreciate it, all of it, you know. But for me, I don't want to put myself in any danger when I was doing graffiti. I mean, yeah, I did like a little bit of danger, but not to the point where I'm climbing shit that I could fall off a tall building and stuff like that. But
right?
yeah, I mean, that's a whole nother level, dude. And I respect it and I appreciate it so much. And now that I'm 45, I don't want to watch my homies climb a tall ass building. And I don't ever say it, you know, but I'm like, oh man, I'm like freaking out, dude, because I don't want none of my friends to ever get hurt, you know. But yeah, there's different types of graffiti. It's such a broad range of approaches to graffiti. And that's one style of graffiti where people climb up crazy stuff like that. And yeah, you're risking your life to do something, and but what an impact it has, you know, what an impact it has to other graffiti writers when they're like, how the hell? Yeah, and civilians too, like yourself, you
Yeah,
know, you see that and you're like, how do they do that? That's crazy, you know. Yeah, really beautiful stuff, man. And to do it anonymously as well, you know,
yeah,
like nobody's giving you props in this world of like Instagram likes and all that type of stuff. You're doing it without, like you say, not letting anybody know who did it. You know, it's
yeah.
just that word and that mystery figure. There's still a certain mystery to it, which is a beautiful thing that we were able to do nowadays. You know.
Well, it's another reason why it makes art such a special thing. Um, Art, if anyone wants wonderful pieces of art and cool tattoos, Sergio's the man. I really appreciate you coming on here, man, talking about. I didn't know exactly where the conversation would go outside of jiu-jitsu, but I think if we look at the total percentage, that we probably talked the least about that, which means it was awesome. It was a good conversation. I really appreciate you coming on, and I'm very grateful for the work that you do.
Thanks, Abe. Man, everything's connected. You know, all the art forms are connected, and yeah, it's important to whatever you learn from one aspect in your life, you could apply it to jujitsu, and whatever you learn in jujitsu, you could apply it to the other parts of your life. So Yeah, I'm really
100%,
grateful to
man.
be on the podcast, man. I really appreciate you inviting me to be on here.
Absolutely. We'll run it back again when the stream comes out.
All right, brother.
Hey, friends, Abe here. Thank you so much for tuning into this episode and sticking around to the very end. If you want to support it, leave a 5-star review on Spotify or check out www.maynideapodcast.com, join the mailing list, and stay up to date on all things The Mayn Idea, from future guests, sponsorship opportunities, products that I'm using to help me perform at my best, invites to ask me anything, and any upcoming pertinent information to the show. I cannot do this show without you. It is literally why I show up each week and put these episodes together. So thank you from the bottom of my heart from being part of the community. I hope you have a great day.